All right, afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So for this week's workshop, I'm joined again by Liam Willcox. Thank you very much for being here, Liam.
No worries, no worries. Pleasure, dream.
Diving into a favorite topic of his, I think. A little bit of underwater technique, a little bit of
Definitely.
a little bit of fly kick, and a little bit of breaststroke pullout. This was one that was sent as a request on the Google Forms poll that I sent out to get any requests from swimmers. So there's quite a few underwater based ones. So hopefully this pretty much covers all of the bases, Liam.
Leading
So
on from the dives.
there
Leading
we
on
go.
from the dives.
Perfect. I know. Look at that. It's almost like it was planned or something like that. Right. So a couple of things to start off with. Just kind of looking at why underwater, and it's probably a pretty good question because I think if we watch a lot of races, Liam, some people don't always understand or value the sheer power of underwater work. I mean, what do you think?
Definitely, especially when it comes to comes to the turns and going into that last lane.
Mm,
Some people just pop straight up and try and swim it, and it's still a key part. It's still a fast part of the sport as well. So
absolutely. And the kind of four key points here, guys, is that with the first one there, with the right technique and the right tempo for you, underwater work is significantly faster than swimming at the surface. I mean, I'm sure we can find some science to go into it, and there's plenty of literature on it, I imagine. But fundamentally, it's way faster underwater. A lot of that comes down to the fact that with a lower tempo of fly kick, you can travel as far underwater as you can on the surface with more strokes. So you're saving energy, and it is a more powerful action. With streamline, there's less drag that you create, which is obviously very beneficial, especially like Liam said on that last turn, when the last thing you want is to have drag forces smacking you backwards. And fundamentally, your underwater kicking, fly kick in particular, gives us the opportunity to maintain speed off the wall. And we've generated that force, Liam, just like off the start. We don't want to be losing it, do we?
nope. Dive especially on it, again. We'll look at it in a second, but the timing of going into a fly kick as well, that plays
Absolutely.
a big factor into it. So
Yeah.
the
Well,
balance of both.
yeah. And when we talk a little bit about breaststroke, underwater pullouts as well, timing's got lots to do with that. Like, so much of that is timing in terms of maintaining speed. So those are kind of a few of the reasons as to why underwater is important and why we promote it. So going into this nice little simple image. So the first bit here, and I guess Liam, we could just kind of like riff off each other a little bit here. If I pause awkwardly, then you can you can
I'll
start
jump in,
talking.
save the day.
Absolutely. So from the streamline position, when you dive, when you push off the wall, when you turn, whatever, whichever one you want to look at, the first thing you're going to do is obviously initiate the kick and start with your upbeat. So for both me and Liam, and Liam, I'll open this up to you as well. That when we initiate it, we want to be initiating from the center of the chest or the sternum, which is right in the middle of the rib cage. That's where we want to initiate, and that's where we want to be generating a lot of the movement from, and the body essentially flows along with that movement. What do you think about that?
No, that's what I say to all the younger ones, and some of the other guys would have known what I'm on about as well. I always say, yeah, same as you, sternum just below. But the one key thing to remember is that bit in streamline, your head should be in line. So the people who, some people would try and push their head right down in between and their arms are up behind really awkwardly, or their eyes are looking up. So you need to have that top position spot on to help the rest, go into place, go into the flow.
Absolutely. And that line that Liam's mentioning is generally from the hips to the head. And to be honest, I mean, this is actually not a bad image to use because it's not the most perfect position, but you can generally see here, if my mouse moves around, that you have got a line from the hips through to the back of the neck, and it is pretty straight. And
Yeah.
I think it's worth mentioning, and we said this about starts a few weeks ago, that while there's a model that we would like to use and like to see through butterfly kick, it's not always perfect, and not every swimmer. Well, there's very few swimmers who actually have the movement down enough where they don't lose any speed. There's always little nuances here and there where it's not quite, it's not quite right. But fundamentally, what we're talking about here is the baseline and the basics of it. And I know before we started, Liam, and there's a slide about this in a minute, that we really were talking about ankle flexibility. And you can already see here from the swimmer who's initiating this kick, going up to those ankles, that she's already got them nice and long and pointed, ready to start downbeat, start the downbeat.
Again, it comes back to flexibility and land training, all of that kind of stuff. The stretching is so important. If your ankles are quite tight, same with your lower back, quite tight, you're going to be quite stiff. So you're not going to be able to hit any of these positions. You're going to be quite rough, quite tight, trying to kick down off of ankles, which probably won't even be fully flexed or anywhere near it. So you're kind of awkwardly kicking in a way.
It's kicking with your feet down like that.
Yeah.
I've seen a few of those in my time.
Yeah, same.
Definitely. I mean, and definitely from the lower back, like Liam mentioned, it's vital to have that ability to be mobile through the lower back, to let your hips go and move around. And especially when it comes to pre-pull, a number of the pre-pull exercises are geared towards loosening up the lower back and allowing your body to move properly. And this is kind of one of the reasons that we talk an awful lot about land preparation and land training is so important, to allow you to actually hit the positions. And ankle flexibility here, as you can see, and like Liam said, that lower back flexibility is just two of the key areas for fly kick. Never mind another stroke or a turn or a start, all of these different things. This is just for one area. So absolutely vital. And I think it's worth mentioning as well at this point that, when that up kick, what we're always looking for from the up and the downbeat of the kick is to try and keep it as balanced as possible. You're never going to have that upbeat. Well, in my opinion, you're never going to have that upbeat as strong as the down. It's never going to be exactly the same, but you can definitely work to really make sure that you're driving hard and you're still getting some benefit from that upbeat.
And feel it as well.
Absolutely. Well, actually, we mentioned this on another slide when we were briefly talking before we started, but I think it's probably worth dropping in already when it comes to the upbeat. Keeping those toes nice and long and using the feet to feel that water as you drive it up is always going to give you a much more powerful drive on the upbeat of the kick. Exactly what Liam just said there. We're feeling it. I mean, so it's a hard one to explain. I don't know whether you agree, Liam, to explain what it feels like, but when you get it, you get it.
Yeah.
And I think
it's similar to the breakout. So when I've done breakouts with some of the guys who'll be watching this, with like the freestyle legs going into the arms, I would say, you'd be like, right, when you get it right, and you get to the end of the pool and then you turn around and be like, actually, I felt that one. It's the same again on fly kick. If you can't feel yourself pushing back, or if you don't really set your mind on focusing on that point, then you're probably not going to feel it. But when you do feel it, the difference is there.
And it's paying attention to it, really, isn't it? You got to pay attention to the moments that you feel like go well, but then know what it feels like when it doesn't go well. It's all well and good asking me or Liam for visual feedback, and we can tell you whether we saw it or not. But if we always tell you that, I don't think we're doing the best job we can, because we're not giving you the opportunity to feel it for yourself and to figure it out. So I think fundamentally for me, Liam, we're here to give you guys the skills and to teach you the basics and the fundamentals of what we want and what we want to see. And then you guys go and explore the rest of it.
100% agree with that.
Yeah. Awesome. Right. Moving forward. Right. So not a huge amount of change in the picture, but this is just starting to illustrate the downbeat. And Liam, what are kind of some of the key factors when you start that downbeat? I know you talked a lot about the hips. I'll kind of let you go on that one a little bit.
I was going to say, so if you bounce back before to the slide and just keep bouncing, you'll see the hips slightly starting to push back. So again, that's all down to the flexibility lower back. So as the kick's coming in, you're pushing your hips back, setting yourself up ready for the next one, like to go back up again. So you're keeping a continuous kick. So as you're pushing down, the hips are going back up, and that's setting yourself so you get that nice flick at the end as your feet hit the bottom, and then you're pushing your hips forward as you're bringing your legs back up. So I think well, everyone will probably seen it, the diagram I draw on the board of the stick man.
Yeah, with the upper nice big hip push, yeah.
And they always go like, well, why is his hips really high up? That's where his chest is to. The rest of it is literally lower back, go into your hips. So it's always, you know, it's like a nice long whipping action.
Absolutely. And we've already said that, you know, you initiate through the chest, and even when those hips are driving up, it's your core and your chest initiating, your core really pushing it down, that is creating that movement. It's not just your hips totally disconnecting from your body. You know, it's absolutely, I think it's so important to always remember that this action is a flow down the body. It's never just one body part on its own. It's, you know, so
you never just bend it in the middle.
Exactly. Either it's either the bend like that, or it's the knee chop.
Yeah.
So there'll be an image in a minute about foot position, but you can already see here, even though it's slightly blurred, that the feet are starting to really drive down. You know, again, talking about feel on the front of the feet as you start pressing those toes and those feet down, feeling that water being pushed and driving off almost like a platform. You know, and when you feel it and when you get it right, you definitely know about it. So moving just into the finish of the downbeat, and it's funny, Liam, because like fundamentally the basic skills of a fly kick aren't that complicated. I mean, this is almost the last slide on fly kick. It almost feels like it's over too quick, but fundamentally, guys, the skills and the basics here, they're not that complex, you know, and sometimes it's easy to kind of go, oh, well, can it be that simple? But actually, genuinely, yes, it is that simple. And you can already see on this last image that nice high hip position, nice long legs, and those feet really driving down into an extended position. And, you know, we already said that we've got a nice straight line from the head to the hips, and then from the hips to the toes, it's all nice and driving down. I mean, we can flick through a little bit from the start to the middle to the end.
Yeah. Right. So the hips coming back up, and then from there the hips will be pushing back down again.
Absolutely.
As the feet return back up.
Absolutely, and the principle is exactly the same if you're on your back.
So all the kids out there who say, "Where do you kick from on fly?" and you say the hips.
Nope.
I lose it all the time. Unbelievable.
Well, I think that little demo we gave of the body action like that is what happens when you kick from the hips and the knees.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think a big message that I definitely pass across, guys, is that if you don't, you know, if you get maybe 1 out of every 10 fly kicks feeling like you're actually getting it right, don't be disheartened. This takes a lot of practice. It takes a long time. It's just like any other skill, any other thing in your life that you're trying to learn. It's just about giving yourself the opportunities to experiment with it. So if you're pushing off the wall and doing no fly kicks ever, you're essentially robbing yourself of opportunities to practice and to get better at it. And in those instances, for me, I don't know how you feel, Liam, but if anyone was to tell me I can't do fly kick when they're not giving themselves opportunity to try and do fly kick, then I'd definitely be flipping that around and go, well, actually, I think you could do it, but you've got to try. You've got to give yourself opportunities.
And this is why we say about, you know, trying to get past the flags in training. You know, it may, for most people, it'll probably take 2 kicks, streamline a nice solid 2 kicks, you know, guys who are older,
unless you're Mark Edmondson.
Oh yeah, then you're 15.
Yeah. So Mark, if you're watching this, you can give yourself a bit of a tick in the box there. No, but at the same time, and to be fair, actually, that's just got me thinking a little bit about something. If there's someone in your group, guys, who is a great fly kicker, like, spend some time watching what they're doing. Like trying to learn from people who are maybe a little faster or maybe a little bit more consistent with it. You know, don't feel like you can't use the people around you outside of just us to watch and observe and go, well, actually, what can I learn from them? Or maybe even ask them a question about how they feel it, if that makes sense. Because, you know, when I swam, so much of fly kick was all about how it felt. You know, and when, like we've already said, when you felt it, you knew it was happening, but then you felt the missteps as well. You know, you just got to give yourself the chance to actually figure it all out.
I think it goes back to when you said about some people, you know, they may get one completely right and then they'll go off it a little bit. It's quite easy to get one action, so the downbeat and the upbeat right, it's quite hard to continue that action.
Mm.
So there'll be swimmers, and I know there's a few where you'll do one which looks like an absolute beautiful fly kick, and then you'll pause, and then you'll do the another one.
Mm.
So even that, just building steps on that, just trying to keep it continuous. And at the start, it does feel weird, and you do feel like, you know, what am I actually doing when I'm pushing my hips back and forward? But when you do get it right and you feel that continuous like motion, you will be flying through the water, and you'll
Absolutely.
feel it a lot more as well.
Absolutely. So, I mean, fundamentally, don't worry about power. Worry about consistency first. You know, I think I absolutely agree with you there, Liam. If you pause in that kick, then you're not doing it the service that it deserves.
No.
So the final slide essentially on the fly kick here is this awesome picture of what I don't know what else to describe it as is pigeon toeing essentially. That as this swimmer is driving through his downbeat of his kick, you can see the toes turned towards each other, ankles, the angle from the ankles to the toes is coming through into the middle. And what that essentially creates, guys, is just a larger surface area for your feet to hit as they drive down, and it gives you more of a platform to push off the water with. You know, and that is an absolutely fantastic example of that ankle flexibility. And you can just see how his ankles are almost overtaking his toes.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, again, this is what ankle flexibility is all about, and this is what your S&C land work pre-pull preparation is all about, to allow you to be able to do these little tiny details that may not seem significant, but if they're done properly and they all add together, then they make a hell of a difference. All right.
This picture reminds me of all the time when I see stuff like this for ankle flexibility. It reminds me of Sylvia. So I remember Sylvia used to get kids out on the side, and because of her backstroke, they literally bang, toes hitting the floor,
Yeah.
legs. And I was like, I wasn't going to try it, but bang, straight away. I was like, and then you see like the kids get out trying it, and they're like, but yeah, every time.
Well, what's even funnier, actually, I don't know if you've actually seen Sylvia's Commonwealth Games race, but she doesn't even do any fly kick.
Oh,
I think it's because it was the late 80s? I think it was the late 80s or 90s. I honestly can't remember now. I might have to ask her. I don't want to be wrong in that.
She's watching this now. I'm like,
yeah, if she's watching this, Sylvia, I do apologize if I've got that wrong. I don't want to get it wrong. But it is funny because, you know, in the 80s on butterfly and backstroke, it actually wasn't that common to be doing fly kick. But when it started to come in, the reason they had to bring in that 15-meter rule is because people were going so ridiculous and going like 40 underwater. And I want to say it was like the 88 Olympics, the 100 back final. I can't remember the guy's name who won, but he did something like 80 meters underwater or something like that.
it's crazy.
Like, but there was no rule, and then they brought the rule in afterwards because it was just getting out of hand. It wasn't 100 backstroke anymore. Yeah, well, it wasn't even 100 backstroke anymore. It was just a 100 fly kick. So yeah, so again, like it's almost weird that that's as simple as it gets, but you know, that's as simple as it is, ladies and gentlemen. And those are the fundamentals, really. And again, I think the big thing here that we've already said is it's reps, just reps, and give yourself the opportunity, and you know, ask for feedback, but at the same time, take our feedback and go and do your own practice with it. You know, you can't be relying on us every step of the way, and we don't want to be that person either. We want to help guide you guys. We don't want to be stood there fixing everything, because that's how you guys will learn best. Right. So, breaststroke underwater pullout, pulled from this amazing Japanese TV footage. I think this is Kitajima. I think it is. I'm on the video that I found. I'm pretty sure it did say that. So so let's go through some breaststroke pullout, Liam. So I thought I'd start on this one, nice and simple, just the basic baseline position. So essentially streamline. One thing I'll definitely know is that it is interesting. Well, it's not so much interesting. The reason that he's in almost this very unusual shape is because I think I did press the pause button as he was about to initiate his fly kick. His streamline was a little bit straighter than that.
Legs are drifting up a little bit, Freddie.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure he is just about to initiate his fly kick. But you know, as soon as you push off that wall, guys, the reason I wanted to introduce this one first, apart from just the basic streamline, was always be aware of depth. I think you need to be cautious of how deep you go. Obviously, you don't want to be just under the surface and super shallow, but with the danger with underwater work is when you push off, then you go in this arc shape going down and then up, and you end up coming up far too steep. And also when you watch elite level breaststrokers, especially when you get underwater footage, and I don't know whether you've ever thought about this, Liam, when you watch the underwater footage, especially if it's not at the side, they go in, and when they pull through, it almost looks like they have this really jagged change of direction. And it's not a really extreme change. It is a change, but it almost looks a little bit worse than what it actually is, if that makes sense. So fundamentally for me, anywhere from probably half a meter to, well, it depends how confident you are, anywhere from half a meter to just under a meter under the water is probably about the place that you want to be. You got any thoughts
that
on
change you're talking about from, as they pull, that's normally coming off of the back of the fly kick. So as they're as they're finishing that kick off and their legs are almost pointing down, that's why you see that kind of
that is a very good point. Yeah,
that movement.
That is a good point, actually. And fundamentally as well, if we kind of link that into us preferring the fly kick to be first, I mean, in my simple mind, it's avoiding a position that we don't want to be in, which is creating drag. And breaststroke pullouts aren't like butterfly kick. That you will lose speed if you don't get the timing right. And we already said this at the start, that timing's quite important. And on breaststroke pullouts, it's definitely important to make sure that we don't lose velocity and speed. So hopefully that makes sense so far. That's just the basic streamline. So obviously the fly kick. Now, from mine and Liam's perspective, we do prefer to have the fly kick first. Thinking deeper into it, for generally those reasons that it does allow us to have a more consistent streamlined position. Is there anything else that you want to kind of add into that, Liam?
No, it comes back to timing and the power side. So if you have an awesome fly kick, like we've just spoke about on previous slides, if you have that and then you go into the pull phase, you've got two big bits of power there you can use. Whereas if you do your fly kick at the same time as your pull, most of the time the fly kick, A, you can't get the range of movement through your back, and B, it's kind of just wasted because your arms will probably outweigh the power through the legs on a fly kick. So you'd rather have two bits of power rather than just one and a little flick at the end.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting. I'm even though I haven't specifically seen it, I'd be almost certain that someone would have done some form of study on the comparison of the two. Almost certainly. And
it's weird because when I went up to Loughborough to see some of the NTC guys, I can't remember which one it was now.
Is it Wilby?
Yeah, he does his at the same time. But when I spoke to, I forgot his name, who coaches him?
Dave.
Yes, Dave was saying about it, and I mentioned it. I was like, what do you prefer? And he's like, his fly kick isn't that strong. So he's got to do it at the same time to come up. And he did say, he was like, I would prefer him to come here with an awesome fly kick, because he was saying he was working on it ever since he was there for all that time, and then leading up to the Olympics, he was like, I don't know if we can continue this. I don't think it's going to work.
Yeah, and that's funny actually, because that kind of makes a little bit of sense in something that I spoke to some of the swimmers about this morning, and in this little workshop I did about training specifically for events, that if you've got to go and do something, you've got our responsibility, or what I see our position in the development of a swimmer as being, is we're trying to give our age group swimmers, our youth swimmers, all of the tools possible for them to go on to, say, a uni program or a senior program or a NTC, and to not have to run into those situations where,
definitely,
like with James Wilby, they're having to make a decision because his fly kick simply isn't good enough. Which is crazy when you think about it. That to be limited like that with someone who's so good, on breaststroke. So definitely a big message going out there to everyone, guys. Like, fly kick, and this is just this single context. you cannot get away with not being strong at fly kick now. You know, it influences everything, even breaststroke. Now, once the rules changed, there's no hiding from it. You know, and you know, it's such an advantage and a weapon that you can use in so many different ways. It's not just about going to 15 meters every time and looking flash. You can use it in so many different ways to, you know, on the last 25 meters, it could be just that thing in your back pocket that you've always got, you know, on that last turn of a 200, or if you watch like Lochte and Phelps, you know, the last turn of a 4 medley or the 200 free or 200 medley, they've just got that in the bag. You know,
I think, you know, when you watch races, and I think a load of kids when there's as well, you'll see the ones who've got awesome fly kicks. They'll go into the turn and, like, you know, just behind someone, and they'll come out in front. They may get caught on the swim, and then they go into the turn and they come out in front again. You know what I mean? It's, yeah, it does show, like you said, well, I would say one of the main things in swimming, as people say, the fifth stroke, isn't it? So
yeah, well, there's a reason they call it that.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's the fly kick position. So the next bit we just wanted to talk about was the pull back, or the pull, you know, pull through, pull back, however you want to describe it. But that drive is you've connected with the water and you start to press through. And I know the way that you like to describe it, Liam, you talked about it very much looking like a butterfly pull, which absolutely is right. You know, it's both those hands driving back together. It's extremely powerful. You know, is there anything that you normally pass on to some of the younger swimmers specifically about how to learn a little bit more about that?
No, so off the fly kick. So as soon as you're about, like, literally as you're finishing the fly kick, you're pressing down into that catch and then just holding as much water as you can. I've seen stuff in the past where people have said about, you know, trying to keep that pool nice and narrow, and I'm just like, that there is probably one of the most powerful positions, you know, and it is pretty much a butterfly pool, because, you know, butterfly, you want to try and grab as much water as you can to go round. Exactly the same. Apart from when you finish off here, you're finishing off in your thighs, and, you know, you're nice and tight through, but yeah, just pressing down in, holding as much as you can.
Absolutely. And to be honest, guys, those of you who are watching, that applies to every stroke. Every stroke where you have an opportunity to press that water back, especially when you're looking at freestyle, backstroke, butterfly, you know, catching that water and then start to press it and driving off it all the way through to the back of the stroke, you know, you will gain so much more than you've ever felt before. You know, it's a lot of people are lazy on the back of that stroke, and they don't always press all the way through, and you're missing just that little bit of extra power that you could generate. It's a game changer when you get it right. You'd be amazed how much it can gain for you. And definitely one thing to note, obviously, you can see the force that he's starting to get from this, and, you know, he's really driving through, almost like he's pulling himself up out the pool from the pool side. But you can see from his head through to his hips to his toes that he is in a nice long line, and he's not going off in different directions and different angles. He's using that force to drive himself directly forwards, rather than having little upward movements or downward movements, which I think is important.
Again, to depth. If you're too deep, you'll see most of the people pulling themselves up to try and bend. Some people, if they're too shallow, trying to pull themselves down, you want to be going forward. It's the quickest way.
Well, that is such a great point, actually, because, you know, you would generally think of people going too deep and pulling up, but when you watch really young swimmers, they're almost conditioned mentally to come straight to the surface desperately, and they come up, they go, oh no, I've got to do a pull, and then they start dropping themselves down again. It's just this little zigzag, isn't it? Exactly. So, I mean, fundamentally, guys, with anything underwater, you've got to be so patient. You've got to go through the process and go through the motions, not in a negative sense, but you just got to go through those steps to make sure that you're getting it right, because it will be faster. Don't be desperate. It's not the way that you want to swim.
Definitely.
So Liam's already mentioned about the hands finishing on the thighs, and this is a pretty good demonstration of one, how to maintain a pretty good streamlined position even with your arms by your sides, and have your hands on your thighs to keep your body profile nice and thin. And something that you've mentioned, Liam, and hopefully maybe we can dig the image up that you mentioned. You can see that he's got shoulders shrugged there to make himself even thinner. And there's an image that you've seen before that we weren't able to find today, that showed that perfectly.
Yeah, it's got the three. I know it's got Jameson in the middle. I don't know who's on the either side, but literally all three of them, hands on the thighs, shoulders tucked in, hiding the chin, just completely streamlined with their arms to their side.
I wanna say that was 2012 200 breast final, and it was Daniel Gierta, Michael Jameson, Andrew Willis.
Probably.
I want to say it was those three. And which is even more cool about that, if we can dig it up somewhere, we'll definitely post it out there, that Michael and Andrew were both coached by Dave McNulty and Graham Outwhistle. And Graham basically conditioned the two of these guys to have that underwater pullout absolutely nailed. But it's funny. I actually remember them going through some of that practice and how detailed they were going, like to the point where they were adjusting the hand position closer and further away on the thighs to go, well, what's faster, what's slower? Like they had them on drag cable, seeing if all these little tiny positions were better or worse for them. And
I've said to some of the younger guys about the hand position, because we've done numerous pullouts, and you'll see them just their hands off on their side, but right, same again. And the difference, and you'll see the difference when you get that really strong pull through and you're finishing on your thighs and you're nice and tight, you'll see yourself zip forward.
Mm-hmm.
If your hands just go out wide and your head's like this, all that drag's hitting your shoulders, hitting your arms sticking out, you're just going to slow down. But if you get it right, you should just dart straight forward.
Yeah, I mean, it's similar to fly kick. There's such a huge self-awareness bit there, being aware of how fast you're moving. And for me, this is one of the kind of key moments in breaststroke pullouts where it could be the greatest thing ever that you've ever done in terms of underwater, but it could also be the biggest disaster. Because if you hold that position too long and you aren't paying attention to how fast you're moving, suddenly before you know it, if you've switched off, or it's the last turn of a 200 breaststroke, or it's a 200 medley turn or a 400 medley turn, you're like, absolutely, oh my God, I'm knackered. And you stop thinking, you're holding that position, you're just slowing down. And suddenly you've stopped moving. Oh no, I've got to bring my hands forward. And then you've slowed down even more. You've got to be so aware and get that timing as close to spot on as you can. And again, for me, it's so much about awareness. And that's something that we can help you with in terms of visuals. But for me, as a swimmer, I think it's so important to learn what it feels like and to experiment with timing. You might do one in training, and it might be way too long. You go, well, actually, yeah, that was way too long. I was slowing down. Or you may try and go too fast, and suddenly you feel this massive drag force hitting you because you're like, you've gone through and you're like straight through, and then all of that water is just hitting you again. You'll find that perfect balance. And sometimes it's different for everybody.
Fully agree on that. Timing's a big one, and everyone's different. The more you do this, the more you'll know what works for you.
Absolutely. And again, you've talked about opportunities. How many opportunities do you get? There's a lot. Exactly. Anytime you do a breaststroke push-off, you've got an opportunity. Anytime you do a start with some breaststroke or some fly kick, you've got an opportunity. And you don't need us to tell you that. And the quicker you make it an opportunity, the better it's going to be. And obviously, before we click forward there, just again, that body position he's like a rocket. He's just like an absolute rocket.
Can be.
Absolutely. So the next two slides are looking at hand recovery position. And the big one really for me, again, it's that little timing bit with the hands coming forward and then the kick starting to come through. But a lot of it for me is how tight you're getting those hands to the chest. And I know, again, this is something you've talked an awful lot about, Liam, about those hands being nice and close and getting them through as tight as possible. Is there anything you want to throw into the mix there?
No, hands nice and tight. Head position. Low to the younger ones. And, we're getting out of it. We are getting out of it. As the arms are coming up, you've got a tendency to just like push your chin up as well and look for the water, like look for the surface. Just need to let it go past your head. Just let it go through. So you're keeping that nice long body position. As you can see, as his arms would go up, his head is still looking down.
Yeah, and you can. I'm just flicking between the two slides. You can see that nice and clearly that the head's down and long. I mean, it's not changed from that that arms by side position.
Nope.
You know, he's bringing those hands nice and close to the chest. I mean, there's been people that I've also met, Liam, and I don't know whether you've come across it much. I generally would be hands, you know, coming through with maybe a slight crossover of the fingers to keep it tight.
Yeah.
I've seen people who go even more so. They go right over the wrists.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends how flexible you are and mobile you are to be able to achieve that. But fundamentally, again, it comes down to personal preference. Now, we could throw a camera at the bottom of the pool. We'd have to find out a way of doing it. But we could throw a camera down. We could look up and go, well, yeah, like you can get in that position. But what it comes down to, guys, is you communicating with us what you feel like works best. You know, it might be hands just slightly crossing over. It might be right on top of each other. It might be fully crossed. It's, you know, there's a lot of variation there. But fundamentally,
I think one thing as well is even standing on poolside and just going, right, how do I actually do this? And just lifting your arms up above your head as tight as you can. You know, you'll be able to see it physically when you lift your arms up. You go, oh, my elbows have gone out. Okay, so that's water hitting straight away.
Yeah.
You know, so it's just getting used to that position and what, you know, flexibility again, how it best suits you.
Yeah, and I mean, and the purpose of all of this is if you were to stand in front of yourself doing it and watching, you would ideally want to see a very thin body profile. So basically only literally seeing the top of your head and your arms coming forward as they come through, like no bums up, no toes down, none of that. You could literally just see almost like a cylindrical kind of cross-section of yourself looking forward. Because the less of yourself you can see like that, the better. That's the more streamlined you're going to be. So the second one there, again, hands are coming forward still nice and tight. The head's still down. Nice long body line from the head to the hips. The heels are coming up for that kick. And as those hands come forward, the kick's going to fire through, ready to hit that surface. And on the next slide, I already said to Liam, I used a slightly different one because I wasn't overly happy with the image of the breakout that Kitajima used on this one. But, you know, we're essentially back to that baseline position. And the big one for me is that obviously it's a depth thing. You know, you need to be aware of how deep you are. You should start feeling that water just starting to go over the top of the hat. Liam calls it the donut. You know, that is. You do use the donut, don't you?
Yeah, I said about the glaze over the head, and then everyone turned into Krispy Kremes, didn't it?
Yeah, the glazed donut of the head. You know, and you know, and that's coming to the surface, and then the head's still looking down. You can see that nice and clear there. And fundamentally, as soon as you go into that breakout, you're sculling through into that pull out. Head stays, eye line stays below the surface until you start in sweeping, and then you're into the stroke.
Yeah,
beautiful.
And that part takes a lot of time, a lot of fails, literally a lot of things that go into that bit, because you know it's really hard to know how deep you are just off your head by looking down at the bottom of a pool. But the more you do it, the more you'll feel where you're to. And this is why I've said to some of the younger ones, even some of the older ones, you need to press out just before you're there, because as you press out, you're driving yourself forwards, and you're still going up, like ever so slightly gradually. So by the time you press out and your arms are out, ready to go back in again, you will be at the surface. And like you said, as the arms come in, you're taking your breath.
Absolutely. And the thing is, I think you don't want to be beating yourself up if you miss a breakout, you know.
Oh no.
And I mean, I don't know what you think, Liam, but in my mind, if I was in doubt, I'd stay as streamlined as I can for as long as I can.
Yeah.
It's always going to be the better option, rather than if you're thinking, damn, I'm too deep, then just go with your gut. And even if you pop to the surface, you start a little bit too much, but you're still in streamline, at least you're moving forwards and you're not creating loads of drag. So, you know, don't feel like you need to suddenly start going into a swim position because you're too deep. Like, always err on the side of caution and make sure that you're either streamlined or you're trying to move forward as best as possible, because you're always better off. You know,
definitely.
It's definitely the better of two evils, as they say.
Yeah.
So that's the end of that one. Look at that.
Job done.
It's amazing. I'm actually interested to see how long we've been talking for. I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah. What's next, guys? What's next?
What's the well? Hold on. I'll have to tell you in a minute, Liam, because I've got a list somewhere. I've made a list of it. No, but
next thing will be breakouts.
Yeah.
and then free
No, well,
swim turns.
why not? But I mean, fundamentally, guys, that if you've got this far, firstly, thanks for listening, and like we said a couple of times, it can be very easy to kind of feel like this is almost too simple, And sometimes, I mean, even just from us talking about it, when you look at those 4 slides for the fly kick, Liam, it's like, wow, as if can we cover that in 4 slides? But you do, and you're like, well, actually, it's not that complicated, and we don't want to be in a habit of trying to make it something it's not. You may not get it right, but again, we've said it's about reps and it's about practice and just doing the same things, just repeating it will help you. We'll teach you as best we can. But again, you guys need to take that info and use it as best as possible. And moving forward, there's been some really great suggestions that people have dropped into the Google form that I put out last week, just for different workshops. We did this one this week on fly kick and breaststroke pullouts because it was something that was requested. So I'll leave that open, guys. If there's anything else that you're interested in after this, it might be breakouts, Liam. I know turns was one, so we're definitely going to be doing turns soon.
That'll be a good one.
Yeah,
that'll be a good one.
I think that'll be a long one.
Yeah,
we may need to break
every turn.
Yeah, we may need to break it into like 3 sections.
Yeah, we'll do fly and breast, and then we'll do back and free, and then an IM one.
Yeah, crossover turns, a whole thing within itself, I think.
It is.
Like, hold on, where are we going?
Yeah, you have me led out against the wall trying to perform one here.
Sometimes even I do that. I'm like, what's going on? So yeah, so again, guys, thanks very much for watching. If you've got this far and listen to us ramble on, and we'll see you soon.
Take care.
Bye-bye.